this way so we can deliver better futures for all our young people. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister.
Thank you, Mr Dowd. And can I begin by congratulating my honourable friend for Penistone and Stockbridge, along with my honourable friend for Thurrock and the honourable lady for Canterbury for securing this debate in the first place. I'd like to extend my thanks to everybody who's spoken in the debate, and apologies if I don't have the time to respond to every single point that was made, but I think I can respond to many of the honourable gentleman's points. And I've listened carefully to some of the examples that have been given by honourable members on all sides of the House, in particular my honourable friend for Penistone and Stockbridge. And there's no doubt they contain things that are totally unsuitable for school-age children. The age is only a number. It is clearly unsuitable to be used in the concept of consent, and the proud dice game is something that the department have been clear is unacceptable for use as a school resource. I have to say, despite a lot of coverage of that particular issue, we are unaware of any individual cases where it has been used in schools. But high-quality relationships in sex education is important, and as my honourable friend herself set out, and from her own experience, and it can play a key role in keeping children and young people safe, equipping them to understand and resist harmful influences and expectations. It can only do this if it is taught well and appropriately, and good teachers working in good schools which engage expertly with parents can find the right balance. To support teachers to deliver in the classroom, we've run expert-led teacher training webinars. They covered pornography, domestic abuse and sexual exploitation, topics which teachers told us they find difficult to teach. We also published additional guidance to schools on tackling abuse, harassment and other sensitive topics. It has been almost 3 years since the department published statutory guidance on relationships, sex and health education, and almost 2 years since relationships education became a compulsory subject for all schools, and relationships and sex education became a compulsory subject for all secondary schools. Of course, as has been acknowledged, primary schools can choose to teach sex education in order to meet the needs of their pupils, but if they do teach sex education, they must consult with parents on their policy and grant parents an automatic right to withdraw their child from sex education lessons. I will give way.
Very much. Would he agree with me that, given that point, that parents want to see the material, it's rather disturbing that certainly me and my colleagues have heard reports from head teachers that they are not allowed or enabled to share that material from some lobby groups because it's deemed commercially sensitive?
It is concerning, and I want to come to that in more detail because I think I can help to provide some clarification on that. At the heart of RSE is the need to keep children healthy, happy and safe. And the honourable gentleman opposite gave a very powerful example of where more education could make a difference in terms of safety. And I sympathise with his deep hurt in that space. My honourable friend for Thurrock also spoke passionately about safety and the centrality of consent. And this includes knowing the law on relationships, sex and health, teaching about relationships from primary school onwards, in ensuring that younger children understand the importance of building caring friendships and learn the concept of personal privacy, including that it isn't always right to keep secrets if they relate to being safe, and that each person's body belongs to them. In the school's white paper, the government committed to keep children safe through strengthening RSE as well as our statutory safeguarding guidance, keeping children safe in education. The honourable gentleman for Kirkcaldy and Cowdenbeath spoke about the centrality of safeguarding in this. This will support schools to protect children from abuse and exploitation in situations inside and outside schools. The KSIE guidance is updated annually, and it's clear that schools and colleges should be aware of the importance of making clear that there is a zero-tolerance approach to sexual violence. Sexual harassment is never acceptable, and it should not be tolerated. It should never be passed off as banter, just having a laugh, as part of growing up, or boys being boys, and failure to do so could lead to an unacceptable culture of behaviour, an unsafe environment, or in the worst case scenarios, a culture that normalises abuse, leading to children accepting it as normal and not coming forward to report on it. The RSE statutory guidance advises schools to be alive to issues such as sexism, misogyny, homophobia and gender stereotypes, and to take positive action to tackle these issues. As part of relationships education, all primary school pupils are taught about the importance of respectful relationships and the different types of loving, healthy relationships that exist. Pupils will also be taught about boundaries and privacy and how to recognise and report feelings of being unsafe. And to support teachers to deliver these topics safely and with confidence, we've produced RSE teacher training modules, which are freely available on gov.uk. We've also committed to developing a further package of support for teachers to deliver lessons on sensitive topics such as abuse, pornography and consent. And this package includes teacher webinars delivered from March 22 onwards and non-statutory guidance, which offers practical suggestions for supporting children and young people to develop healthy, respectful and kind relationships. The guidance have been informed by an evidence review, stakeholder input and an expert teacher group, and we will publish this guidance this autumn. The Ofsted review of sexual abuse in schools and colleges found that online forms of sexual abuse are increasingly prevalent, with 88% of girls and 49% of boys reporting being sent unwanted sexual images, and 80% of girls and 40% of boys pressured to provide sexual images of themselves. The review also showed that children, even in primary schools, are accessing pornography and sharing nude images. We want to make sure that children receive appropriate teaching in schools on topics that are relevant to their lived experience, rather than going online to educate themselves. Through the RSE curriculum, pupils will be taught about online relationships, the implications of sharing private or personal data, including images, online, harmful content and contact, cyberbullying and over-reliance on social media, and where to get help and support from issues that do unfortunately occur online. Through the topic of internet safety and harms, pupils will be taught to become discerning customers of information and to understand how comparing yourself with others online can impact on your own body image. The department is reviewing its guidance on teaching online safety in schools, which supports teachers to embed teaching about online safety in subjects such as computing, RSE and citizenship. This guidance will be published in autumn of this year. The online safety bill will also ensure that children are better protected from pornographic content wherever it appears online. The statutory RSE guidance sets out the content that we expect children to know before they complete each phase of education. We have, however, been clear that our guiding principles for the development of the statutory guidance were that all of the compulsory subject content must be age-appropriate and developmentally appropriate. It must be taught sensitively and inclusively, with respect to the backgrounds and beliefs of pupils and parents, whilst always with the aim of providing pupils with the knowledge they need. Given the need for a differentiated approach and the sensitive and personal nature of many of the topics within the RSE curriculum, it is important that schools have the flexibility to design their own curricula so that it is relevant and appropriate to the context of their pupils. The department's policy, therefore, has been to trust the expertise of schools to decide the detail of the content they teach and what resources they use. As mentioned previously, we've made a commitment in the white paper to strengthen our guidance in this respect, and we will also review and update that guidance regularly, at least every 3 years. We're confident that the majority of schools are capable of doing this well and have been successful in developing a highly quality RSE curriculum that is appropriate for the needs of their pupils. But in the context of this debate, it is clear that that isn't always the case and that there are genuine concerns about many of the materials that have been used. I would like to stress that allowing schools the flexibility to make their own decisions about their curricula doesn't mean that they should be unaccountable for what they teach. Schools are required by law to publish their RSE policies and to consult parents on them. As their children's primary educators, parents should be given every opportunity to understand the purpose and content of what their children are being taught. We've set out a clear expectation for schools to share examples of resources with parents in the RSE statutory guidance, which all schools must have regard to. Schools are also bound by other legal duties with regard to the delivery of the wider curriculum. All local authority maintained schools are required to publish the content of their school curriculum, including the details of how parents or other members of the public can find out more about the curriculum a school is following. There is a parallel requirement in the model funding agreement for academy trusts for each academy to publish the same information on their websites, and it is our intention that that should form part of the new standards for academies. As my honourable friend for Penistone raised, and as my honourable friend for Aberconwy echoed as well, last week in the committee debate on the schools bill in another place, the issue was highlighted of schools who believed they were unable to share resources with parents due to the restrictions placed on them by intellectual property legislation. We are clear schools can show curriculum materials to parents, including resources provided by external organisations, without infringing an external provider's copyright in the resource. For example, it's perfectly possible for a school to invite parents into the school to view materials on the premises. And whilst, of course, we have to be mindful not to overburden schools with repeated requests, we do expect schools to respond positively to all reasonable requests from parents to share curriculum material. We therefore expect schools to share RSE content and materials with parents openly and transparently where requested. We're clear that they should not enter into any contracts with third parties that seek to restrict them from sharing RSE resources with parents. The RSE Train the Trainer programme that we delivered from 20 to 21 brought to light several examples of good practice in schools, including in schools where schools had engaged with parents effectively, but I apologise that I'm not going to have time in this debate to address those. Many schools draw on the expertise of external organisations, as we've heard, to enhance the delivery of RSE, and many will use resources that are produced externally to help schools to make the best choices. The department published the non-statutory guidance, Plan Your Relationship, Sex and Health curriculum. This sets out practical advice for schools on a number of topics, including using externally produced resources, and the Honourable Lady quoted indeed from that. Concerns have been raised today about what schools teach pupils on transgender issues, and schools should be a safe and welcoming place for all pupils. We believe that all children should be supported whilst growing up. However, we recognise that gender identity can be a complex and sensitive topic for schools to navigate, and that there is tension sometimes between rights based on the two protected characteristics of sex and gender assignment. We're working with the Equalities and Human Rights Commission to make sure we're giving the clearest possible guidance to schools on transgender issues. We will hold a full public consultation on the draft guidance later this year, and given the complexity of the subject, we do need to get this right, and we want to take full account of the review being conducted by Dr. Hilary Cass. I realise my honourable friend will need time to respond, and so I just conclude by saying I hear very clearly the concerns that have been raised. As parent of both a girl and a boy, we need to address these issues, and we need to do so in a way that can reassure parents but continue to deliver high-quality relationship, sex and health education.
We only have just on a minute left, so Miriam Cates to